We are getting ready to go live. And we are live and direct. This is going to be a conversation. It's Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month. And we want to make sure that even though the month is ending today, that we are doing our due diligence to make sure that we continue the conversation. So I thank you for tuning in. It is Victory Speaks. We're just heading on the 7 o'clock hour. And we're getting all things technical in order. And playing right now is Beads from Calabash. You could check them out. I do have permission to play the song from Calabash. Just in case Facebook land is listening, you know, those Facebook people, they're listening to me. And tonight, it's going to be good. It's a serious conversation, but it's going to be good. I am your host, Nicole Waldron, aka Victory Speaks, and I am on a mission to have inspired conversation with my friends, with my new friends, and with all of you. You know, we have many conversations all the time, good, bad, funny, ugly, you name it, we have it. And you know, these conversations I've had with many friends and acquaintances across, you know, my life. I said, you know, wouldn't it be great if we could share some of those conversations and see how we can inspire each other to live a victorious life? Because, you know, not every day you kind of feel victorious life, but there is victory in every day. So before I get started, hope you're tuning in. I'm going to ask you to, like, you know, grab something to drink. Don't take too long because, you know, we are ready to do a deep dive into this conversation and get ready to welcome my guest, Serena Wills. And I'm going to tell you all about her. She is special. I met her through the great Dr. Vibe. And like my spirit just took to her and I feel like I have a new sister. And as we get to know one another, I'm learning more and more. And so Serena comes out of New York and resides in Washington, D.C. Lots of activity happening in the Washington, D.C. Woo! We got a sailor on that one.
We're not even talk about it.
Yeah, let's not talk about that. Our conversation will go in a whole other direction. So Serena is a national board certified health and wellness coach through the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaches and is the owner of Divine Right Wellness, Health and Wellness Coaching Practice, a nonprofit guru, a published author, and a poet. She's a mom as well. And she's not just the things that she does. She's also kind. She's loving. She's integral. She's generous with her information and her sharing. Because, you know, sometimes people ask you, oh, so who you are? And we start telling them what we do. And we never really say who we are. And what we are is more than what we do. And so let me tell you a little more about Serena. Serena has published many books and she has been in some anthologies. And so you got to check it out. And I'm going to drop some, you know what, I'm going to make some of you work tonight. You got to go over to Serena's website and we're going to drop her website. And Serena, feel free to put your websites in the comments.
Okay.
So you can go and learn about her. She's a contributing writer, blogger for Valued Victorious and Virtuous and Beautiful Brown Girls, both online magazines and blogs. Did you hear the word victorious in there? Yeah, you did. Where she discusses health and wellness and shares poetry and articles and other national publications. Serena is a mom to her beautiful son. He's just amazing. And I don't know how she's doing all of this today, like, you know, doing, you know, homeschooling, but she's here.
I'm here.
And she's a continuous advocate for ovarian cancer, GYN cancers, and Lyme disease research, and is a member of the Delta Sigma. Man, they would be just like beating me up. You could tell I'm not a sorority person, right? They're like, I just massacred the name right there. Holy Moses. And so Serena, welcome. Give us some hearts, give us some claps, do whatever you need to do. Welcome. I'm so happy to have you here on this inspired conversation.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be invited.
So how was
Appreciate
your day today? How you doing?
that could be a whole conversation in itself about homeschooling, virtual learning. When they tell these kids go to a certain app and they have to scroll through screens to get to an app. And yeah, I mean, I tell people parents are now, I feel like we're teachers' aides, we're the custodian, the school's nurse, the lunch lady, all rolled up into one. Still like a parent as
Yeah,
well, and you're
yeah,
trying to maintain your job,
yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah, it's a lot. It's really a lot.
We've more earned the title super moms now, or super dads for those who have, children like yourself.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a
it's-
lot. And these educators are super, they were already super educators, but I take my hats off to these
listen,
educators. It's a
I
lot.
want to do a show with educators because what they're going through here in Canada and over there in the US, I can't even imagine. I know they're working 12 and 14-hour days.
Yeah. Yeah. And weekends included. It's just too much. It's really a lot. But
Yeah. I think that's where we have to show the self-compassion, right? Self-compassion to ourselves and self-compassion to them. And, recognize, I think COVID kind of lets you know, like, what do you want to focus on? What, don't sweat the small stuff,
exactly.
and really deciding what the small stuff is, because we can get
Mhm.
really caught up into what we think is big stuff and it's really small stuff. And the fact that we could even have life and
Is
wake up this morning is
amen.
it's a big deal. And so I know we're going to talk about ovarian cancer, but we gotta find out. We're in a there's some people who are tuning in, but they're
Okay.
just in our conversation. Because it's just you and me in the living room, girl.
I
And
know.
I didn't have time to get my glass of juice. I just got myself a bottle of water. But I want to know what inspires you, Serena.
Oh my gosh. That's a loaded question.
I know,
What inspires me?
I know.
Um, I mean, like you said, just the gift. I tell people I've really started practicing more about being mindful and being present
Hmm.
and just being inspired that I'm here in a present moment, because some of us didn't make it. Some of us didn't
Come
wake
on
up
now.
this
Yeah.
morning. And just, life inspires me, just I'm a poet, I'm a writer, so I'm an artist. So, art inspires me. I'm a music lover. I love reggae, I love R&B,
Ooh, come on, girl.
house music. I'm from New York originally, so so music inspires me. Just before this show, I was on a Mediascope listening to my friend Tachi, and before that, I was listening to Moonchild, and they're a great band. If no one's heard of Moonchild, please
I'm
look
writing
them
this down now. Moonshot, because I've never heard that
Moonchild,
before.
and they
Okay.
just put you in the right space.
Right.
Yeah, it just takes you away. If you had a stressful day, just put them on, and it's like your troubles will just go away for the present moment. So yeah, and just being a mom,
Mhm.
inspires me, and my other friends who are parents out there, and we have a group where we text each other throughout the day to see if we're okay,
That's
and it's
good.
just an inspiration, just to see what some of my friends are going through, and they inspire me to just want to do more and do better.
That's, you see, that's what I love about you. Just meeting you and just knowing that sharing part of you, it's like, yeah, you are my sister from another mother. Yeah, there's
Oh,
somewhere,
thank you.
somewhere in there, you know. And then, when I looked at the victorious piece, it's like, yeah, she thinks like me. So when you talk about victory, what does that mean to you? Because people say success, they say, victory, but what does being victorious mean to you personally?
When it's funny, when church was open, physically open, my pastors, shout out to them, Pastors Granger and Pastor Joanne Browning,
Hey,
would talk
Pastor.
about,
It's
hey,
not on
Pastor.
live. You're going to be on the replay, so you got to better support Serena. And
Yes, they are awesome. They're wonderful, and they would talk about the victory lap.
okay,
It's and sometimes, I mean, like you said, success is one thing, but it's not that you've made it, but like right now, I always tell people I'm victorious in my stride because I've been
Mhm.
through so much. And when I kind of just look back in that rear view mirror for just a
Right.
second to see what I've been through, I'm like, okay, I really definitely have the victory. I'm here. I've accomplished so much. And, I really sometimes feel like I shouldn't be here. I've just been through so much with health battles and losing loved ones. So to me, victory is when you've accomplished so much. It's not just success or dollars or having that job you've always wanted. That's part of it, but just being victorious in what you yourself have accomplished,
Yes.
whether it's, I've accomplished or I'm victorious in my self-care regimens. Before, someone might not have done anything for themselves,
Yes.
or showing themselves self-compassion. So, victory is really just going the extra, like 10, 15, 20, 30, 40
Yes.
plus miles, and just keep going and just
Yes.
know that you can be victorious in anything you do.
Yeah. 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 I like okay, so what you've just made me pause and do is like, if you're listening on the live, if you're listening on the replay, go get some paper, go get a pen. Have I got a pen? Victory lap,
There
be
you
victorious in your side, like self-compassion. We're really getting into all that care and that love of one another, which is what we need in this season. And
Yes.
even as we get into the nitty-gritty of the conversation, the self-compassion piece is so important. So I thank you for sharing that.
You're
So
welcome.
so Serena, you have a really intricate story
Yeah.
because I was torn. I was like, should I do it on Lyme disease? Should we talk about ovarian cancer? Because
I
you
know.
kind of touch both. But it's ovarian cancer month, but we're going to have to touch on some of the sums. How did you become an advocate for
Mhm.
ovarian cancer?
Yeah, it's a little bit of this will be the shorter story because we could be here all night talking about it. But I think I was sharing a little bit with you how I was a GYN cancer advocate for years. I
Right,
mean, since the late 90s, dating myself here, but since the late 90s, when I myself, just I went to, my mom was always adamant on me getting my annual exams. So I
right.
would get my annual every year. And one year in college, I had an abnormal exam. There were abnormal results in
Mm,
my pap smear. And I was only 20 years old. I'm like, what is going on with me at the age of 20, And you're supposed to be I'm in college, I'm living my best life.
yeah,
And, they said, well, we're going to do some further tests and make sure they are, some of your cells are abnormal cells.
hmm,
And, we want to make sure they are benign. So in order to do that, we have to do a procedure called a LEAP. And a LEAP
okay,
is it's an acronym, but it's LEEP.
okay,
And it's basically a laser procedure because this is the 90s.
right,
So it's like a LEAP procedure, laser, what is that going to do? So I, of course, get on the phone with my mother. I'm in tears. And
yeah,
I was in Syracuse, New York. I went to Syracuse University. So we scheduled the procedure. She came up on the Amtrak, 5 hours.
Amtrak train. Oh my
On the
God.
train, she didn't drive. So she was like,
Yeah,
I got to get on the train and come up
yeah,
there. And Syracuse is not, it's like several hours from Canada, but as you know, it could snow in April.
yeah.
So, of course, when she was coming and the date of my procedure, which was in April, it snowed. I mean, like it really snowed.
Come on
It
now.
was like that. So she's like, look, we're going to still go and get through this. And, luckily the cells were benign,
Good.
but
Thank
at the
God.
time, there was no name on it. My mom was like, well, what is happening? How does she have abnormal cells? And, how did all this happen? So years later, in 2001, I had what is called a reoccurrence. So I had another
Okay.
abnormal pap smear. They examined the cells. This time they had a safer procedure. It's called a chirotherapy, I believe. And I don't know how to
Okay.
quite spell that, but it's where they freeze the cells out of you now. Because if you get too many laser procedures, the one thing is your uterus and your cervix can become weakened. And they said, if we do another laser procedure on you and you want to have children in the future, we may have to go back in and do a stitch to
Right.
make the uterus stronger. So at that time, there was a name for it. And they said, you have what's called the human papillomavirus. You have HPV.
What?
And I didn't know this in the 90s. There was probably no name on it yet. So, and they said some women have reoccurrences. They said you had a reoccurrence within 5 years. but they said all your cells are benign. The abnormal cells are benign, but every year now, every year since then, every year since actually 1995, I have gotten, my annual exam is just a little more in depth because they're looking to make sure that, I'm okay. So
Yeah,
thank
yeah.
goodness I haven't had a reoccurrence in 19 plus years. Thank goodness, knock on
So
wood.
1995, Serena, that's
Yeah.
25 years now.
It's-
So 90 plus years. Wow. And you
Yeah,
know,
that was 25 years ago.
yeah, you did. Your
Like,
son's
wow.
25. He was born in 1995.
I
So
had
that's
to do
I can do the math. I'm not that I'm that good at math. It's because he's 25 and he was born in 1995.
Yes, that's what I was going through at 20. So I was
Wow.
already advocating and talking to younger women in their 20s and their teens about getting annual exams because some of us are not thinking
King, yeah,
getting an annual, that we have a different agenda. We want to
yeah.
go partying and clubbing and getting our
Come on,
career
girl.
off the
Come
ground.
on
But
now.
yeah,
Yes.
we need to go to the doctor and get checked because here I was at the age of 20 and they're finding abnormal cells. And then it happened again at 26. So years later, I tell people fast forward the clock. Like I said, my mom would make me go to the doctor. She made sure everybody went to the doctor. Everybody was taken care of.
Right.
But she was the mom who didn't really take care of herself. And
Ah, so
she made
it's
sure
it,
everybody was taken care of.
this is like the Sailor moment where you stop, you think, and you pause. And you said something, it's funny. I think I have to create we need like a medical journal book. You just brought something back to mind that I have totally forgotten, and I now need to call my doctor.
Mm,
Because Serena, at age 20, I remember having the abnormalities, and they did laser surgery.
yeah,
And the same burning out. So I can remember, and I remember now changing doctors, and all the time doctors have changed. But
yes,
and I mean, I'm not ashamed to say it, and I'm not. Yes, I'm getting naked on Facebook here. But yeah, and I had a hysterectomy about what? How many? 7, 8 years ago.
wow, okay,
So, and a full hysterectomy. So, but now you're making me think about, what? I need to start checking. And this is where family history,
yes,
becomes important because so many times we don't like discuss our family history, especially when it comes to cancer. I don't know what it's like in the US, but
hmm
I grew up in Trinidad, in the Caribbean where I grew up, they were all about like the C word. You didn't say cancer.
mm, yeah,
Right, and so having that conversation, that you were able to have that conversation with your mom is really powerful.
yeah,
um
yeah.
so you were about to say something about your mom and I cut you off, so
No,
let's.
it's okay. Yeah, she's the one where she made sure everyone else was taken care of. So it was myself. She actually adopted two of my sisters, and they both had a lot of medical challenges. So
Right,
she made sure they got their doctor's appointments in and everything. She made sure my grandparents were taken care of and aunts, uncles, but she herself would not go to the doctor.
right.
Like she wouldn't go. So, and it was about 2008, and one of my sisters that my mom had adopted, she had just passed away in 2007. So September 2007, we lost my sister at the age of 24. And my mom was, I tell people like when my sister died, I feel like part of my mom went with her. She was just devastated, heartbroken. She took care of my sister from the time she was a baby because my aunt, my sister's biological mother is my aunt.
Right.
And my aunt had full-blown AIDS in the 1980s. And a few months after my aunt passed away, um, and maybe a few months before my aunt passed away, she had my sister. And my mom made a promise to my aunt, I will take care of her. I will bring her
Uh-huh.
home. And she said, once my aunt Doretha had that comfort knowing that her daughter would be taken care of, she passed away. And the doctors were saying
Serena.
my sister Ayana had so many medical challenges that she may not make it past the age of 2. They didn't give her past the age of 2 years old. And she didn't pass, well, she passed away at 24. So she outlived 22 years. The doctors wrote her off after the age of 2. And my mom, I tell people, my sister is a textbook miracle. I mean,
Right.
like nothing made sense research wise. Like they said, she
Uh-huh.
should have been gone as a baby. I said, well, it's called love. I mean, my mom loved her like nobody else. I mean, she loved us too, but she took care of Ayana and all the needs. I mean, I learned so much about, neurological issues and seizures and all types of things through my sister, and her medical challenges. But all in all, my mom never really took good care of herself.
Right.
So around 2008, my mom was, experiencing menopause, which a lot of women experience, all women experience. And she was just saying, she just felt a little different.
Right.
She's like, I know you got the sweats and I got the hot flashes and I'm freezing 1 minute and I'm
Yeah.
sweating
Next minute,
the next
menopause.
minute. She's like, she's like, you're pouring sweat and then you're freezing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she explained all these symptoms to me. And she said, but something in my body just isn't quite right. And she started talking to me about plans if in case something ever happened to her. And I said, well,
Mm,
why are we talking about this? Like, you're only in your late 50s. You're going to be 60 next year. We're going to celebrate your 60th. But it's like something inside her
she
was
knew.
telling her something was deeply wrong, but she still would not go to the doctor. She was too scared. Now, at this time, my mom lived in New York. I was living in Dallas, Texas. I was very far away from her.
Right.
So I
That must
told
have been
her,
tough, Serena.
I was
That
so
must have
far.
been tough.
So
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not near her. So my grandmother's trying to convince her, like, Marguerite, please go to the doctor. Just at least get blood work or an exam done, and let's just see if you're okay. Maybe
Yeah.
your hormones are, of course, your hormones are acting up because you're going through menopause. But
Menopause.
yeah, but let's just make sure it's just that. And she just wouldn't go. She would make the appointment and then cancel. Then she would make it again. And she would just freeze up and cancel.
So
So
that
I'm in
fear, that
it was
fear.
fear. Yeah,
So let's
fear got
pause a
me.
minute on that fear, that fear. So if
Yeah.
anybody's listening out there, especially to this piece here, how many times are we more afraid
Mm-hmm.
to do something and where we could, take care of ourselves? So we
Yeah.
can't let the false evidence that appears real to
Yes.
stop us from being, and we can't be super mom. It's like when you're in an airplane and they tell you, before you put on your, the one for your child, put on the one for yourself. So
Yeah.
your mom kept putting off these appointments. And
Yeah.
so then what happened?
So then I will never forget this moment in time. It was January 2009. It was about a week or so after Inauguration Day. So we inaugurated, President Obama,
Mama, yeah.
my forever president. And
And I
and then
claim him too, even though I'm over here. I'm claiming him. I'm claiming him.
please, just, we need some hope and inspiration right now. But
Come
anyway,
on.
it was literally about a week after. And
Mhm.
there were a lot of changes happening at my job. And, I was thinking of, possibly moving on to another job. And my
Mhm.
mom said, well, since you're thinking about moving on to another job, why don't you move back to the East Coast? Because I need you. She was like, something isn't right, Serena. And it was her voice. Like I was like, the last time I heard her voice like this is when my sister was dying. Like she knew, like my sister was really sick and we knew she was hopefully not dying, but I said, I think she's dying. And that's when the doctors confirmed, she's not really doing well. And that's the
Wow.
last time I heard my mother's voice like that. So I said, okay, it's January 2009. I said, I said, Mom, I'll be back east by the summer. And I was like literally
Yeah.
packed up my house, my everything. Well, actually, I packed up my apartment, left my house. I had a house in Dallas. So I left the house and just, I said, I asked the realtor, please keep renting it out. I have to get
Yeah.
to
My
the
mom.
East Coast. So I came back to Northern Virginia because that's where I was living before I went to Dallas. I was living
Okay.
in Northern Virginia. And I asked my mom, do you want me to move to New York? And she says, no, 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 New York. I know you in New York City. And you're here for a little while and then like the frustration levels go through the roof. So just
Right.
go back to Northern Virginia. You'll be 4 hours away from me. And I literally moved back July 9th. July 9th, and then to the month, August 9th. I visited her. I went to New York 2 weeks after, and even I was trying to get her to go to the doctor. I'm now in New York in the living room, like, Mom, I'm here. Let's go. Let's go to the doctor. Let's make an appointment. Let's go to a walk-in clinic, just something. And she was like, I just can't. I'm just not up to it. She was so wiped out. I've never seen my mother this tired before. She was barely eating. She had lost some weight, and she was complaining about,
Mm-hmm.
constipation, and I'm thinking, some people get constipated here and there,
Yeah,
but she said, no, I haven't, moved my bowels in like 2 weeks. And I said, okay, we need to get to the doctor. But
that's bad. Yeah.
she just wouldn't go. So she took some, like,
The
look
laxatives
of
and stuff.
magnesia or
Yeah.
and
Self-medicating.
she's self-medicating. So,
We're own doctors now. Yeah, we love to do that as
she's her
Black
own
women.
doctor. And my grandmother is upset. My grandmother's talking to me. She's crying and she says, Serena, I really think something is not right with your mother. So I'm like, she won't go. Like, I can't, like, push her out the house. So I said, I'll come back to New York in a couple of weeks. We'll schedule appointments and go. And before I got a chance to come back to New York, she was in the emergency room. So that was August 9th. She went into the emergency room. And well, she went there a few days before August 9th, and they misdiagnosed her. And they said, oh, you just probably have a bad bout of constipation. It causes weakness and fatigue. Here's some Imodium AD. Go home and you'll feel better in a couple of weeks.
Stop it now.
Oh, yeah. They sent her home with Imodium AD, something you get over the counter, and sent her home. And now New York City, everybody knows New York emergency rooms. You don't just go and you're there for a couple hours. She was sitting there for like 10, 12 hours before she was, like, really seen
And they
to
did
be
not
sent
realize
home.
there was more to the story. Like,
Oh, yeah, they didn't do any scans. They didn't do any, nothing. They did nothing. Because she said, my stomach really feels, like, very tight. And they said, well, that's because you're constipated. But she's trying to tell them, like, but no, this is different. Like, I know my body. This is different. So she went back August 9th, 2009. And now she saw the head of the emergency room. And she told him, I was here a few days ago and they sent me home with Imodium AD. And he said, who sent you home with Imodium AD without doing any scans, ultrasounds? And she pointed to the doctor and she said, I don't know what happened. She said the head of ER went to, had a conversation with that doctor and they came back over and she said, I had all these tests ran. She said, I never saw that doctor again. That was the joke. So maybe he got fired. I don't know. Because after all the scans came back, the ultrasound and everything,
yeah.
I mean, they saw all the tumors. It was
Oh
just,
my God, Serena.
it was just nothing but tumors on the screen, but they could tell where it originated. And they told her, your ovaries have tumors on them, and that's where the origination point came from. But now it has metastasized. It's in your stomach. And she said, well, I can't really breathe. Like, she was having problems breathing. Her legs were weak. And then when they did a CA-125, that's a blood test that a lot of women get, for ovarian cancer. And your normal level should be about 35, in the 30s. And her level was at like 5,000. And they
What?
said, yeah, it was just, the doctor says, off the charts. Like, they said, this is, so they told her right there on the spot, you have stage 4 ovarian cancer. Now, I'm not with her. I'm in the Northern Virginia area, and I was actually in a job interview when she was in the ER. So when I came out of my job interview, I just see all these voicemails on my phone. And it's from my grandmother, it's from
Wow.
friends, and they're like, your mom went to the hospital. We don't know what's happening. And then the last voicemail was my mother. And she said, Serena, they're saying I have ovarian cancer and that it looks like it's stage 4, but they want to keep me. And she was like, we're going to run some tests. And she said, I can't really breathe too well. And when they did it, they did a scan of her lungs, and all the fluid from the tumors was now in her lungs. So the fluid tumors can let off a fluid. So it went up into her
Okay.
lungs and went down into her legs. And that's why her
Yeah.
legs were weak.
The swelling.
And that's why she couldn't breathe, because you have all this fluid in your lungs. Any fluid will make you not be able to breathe well, let alone fluid from a tumor, from
Right.
tumors.
Right.
So they had to drain her lungs in order for her to be able to breathe right. So I got up to New York, and it's crazy. She was in the hospital for a couple of days, and she checked herself out. And she said, I have to go home. I have to see my mother and my daughter, because I have another sister that's at home, and my other sister has autism. So my mom was taking care of her. So I just need to go home and really think about what y'all just told me. I have to just take this in, that I have stage 4 ovarian cancer.
Yeah.
And it was the day before she checked herself out, I went up to the hospital to have a conversation with her. And she said, Serena, I just wanted to talk to you one-on-one without the rest of the family. She said, I want to tell your grandmother everything is happening with me, but she said, I want to tell you what to do when I die. That was the conversation we were having. And I said, well, we were planning on, and just to rewind, like I said, she had turned 60 that year, and I was turning 35 in 2010. So I said, how do we go from organizing a cruise for your 60th and my 35th birthday to now talking about what to do when you die? Like arrangements, and this is how I want you to put me away, and I want you. And I didn't want to hear her. And she says, I need you to listen to me, because here's another thing for people. She says, I don't have a will. I don't have a living will. I don't have a will in case I die. So I want you to know my plans, in case I pass away.
And
So that was, yeah.
that's big what you said, that you said so many things in this piece here, and the will piece is big. But I'm going to go
Yes.
back a few steps.
Yeah.
The advocacy. I'm learning through the journey of life with
Mm-hmm.
family, myself, the power of advocacy, because when you go to the doctor and
Yes.
you don't have someone else who is there to help fight the battle with you, whether you're in the emergency room or asking the questions,
Yeah.
it's because the doctors are the experts. So here you are talking to an expert and they're telling you take Imodium, and
Yeah.
depending on how you were brought up, where you were brought up, you're just going to take it as law. Okay, so they know. And the fact that they weren't listening, and sometimes you lose the energy because you're tired. I remember when
Yes.
my dad was diagnosed with cancer. um,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember the doctor, we went for the results, and I remember the doctor saying to him, Serena, he says, well, if you don't have this surgery, you're going to die. And so I'm looking at you like this right now, but the doctor was looking like this and having the conversation, and we were in front of him. And I'm like, you're fired.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I literally was like, you're fired. And I called his doctor and I said, can you get me another doctor, please? Even though I understand his diagnosis,
Yeah.
I need somebody that is going to care about him. And that's what it sounded like happened, like when your mom went in the second time, but it had to take a second time
It took a
um,
second. Yeah.
for help to happen. And then the symptoms, it sounds like you just wouldn't even think: the swollen legs, the
Yeah.
shortness of breath, the constipation.
Yes. Yeah.
That's unusual. Like the symptoms for ovarian cancer are definitely like the fluid. I'm hearing you talk about the fluid in the lungs,
Yeah.
and you're not even thinking, how do you correlate your ovaries to your
Yeah.
lungs?
Yes. Yeah. That's how bad. I mean, they said that it had metastasized to the point where the cancer, they didn't know how far it went in her body, but they knew it was her whole reproductive system and her stomach. But they said the fluid, the tumors were so big at one point that they expunge fluid, and that fluid could go anywhere in your body. But the one thing I learned about ovarian cancer, I tell people you don't have to have had it for years in order for it to be an advanced stage. It could go from early to advanced stages in a matter of a year. It doesn't take long. It's a very quick and silent cancer. And the first symptoms she had mimicked menopause, so they were saying the bloating, the weakness, the fatigue. Women with ovarian cancer have those same symptoms.
I
Have
am
trouble
booking
going to
the
the
appointment
bathroom.
in the morning. I
Yeah.
am booking and you know what? I'm saying it with a smile on my face, but I am booking the appointment in the morning because, as a mom and you're doing all these different things,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
and I have fibromyalgia.
Yeah.
So, but I am listening to you with some of the other symptoms that don't really relate to fibromyalgia, and you're like, hmm.
Yeah.
And I was reading up on ovarian cancer, and it says like pelvic pain and
Mm-hmm.
different sorts of symptoms. So not that I'm saying that I have it, but I'm saying that it makes you realize that you have to pay more attention, because you just said that this can start in a year. It can move very quickly
Yeah.
through a woman's body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It could go from early, and that's the sad part. That's why 80% here in the United States, 80% of the women who are diagnosed with ovarian cancer are already in stages 3 and 4. 80%. So only 20% fall in the early stages, like 1 and 2. And because there's no accurate testing, there's still to this date no
Are you
test to say,
kidding me?
there's no accurate testing for ovarian cancer. You can't call the doctor and say, hey, I want to get a test for ovarian cancer. And they say, oh yeah, come in and let's do this and send you home. So I tell people with cervical cancer, it's easier to catch because they can detect that through a pap smear, through your annual exam.
Right.
But your ovaries, you think about your ovaries are very deeply embedded, in your body. So you can't see your ovaries in a pap smear or an
Right.
annual. So the only way to see your ovaries is getting like an ultrasound, or now I get every year a transvaginal ultrasound.
A
And
transvaginal ultrasound. Okay, we're writing
the
this down,
insurance,
people.
yeah, and even that is not quite accurate. I mean, it's just a picture. It's just looking at your ovaries, but there's nothing to say we could look in her ovaries or really look at
Yeah.
her ovaries, or this blood test will definitely confirm, or there's even now the gene test. They tell women and men actually to get the BRCA1 and BRCA2
Mhm.
gene test. So that's BRCA1 and 2. And that's a gene test, and everybody carries those genes. Let's just clear that up. Every single person has these genes,
Okay.
men and women. But what they're looking for is the gene mutation. They're
Okay.
looking for the genes to be mutated. And they say that can send off a red flag. Like, okay, she's got the mutation. She's already at high risk for ovarian cancer because her mom had it, but now she has a gene
Right.
mutation. But there are some women, just to say this, that have had their they have no gene mutations, so their gene test is normal. Their CA125 lab work looks pretty normal. They're healthy, they're living great lives, and they still can develop ovarian cancer. There's no like way to say, oh, if you do this, this, and this, you will get
Yeah.
ovarian cancer. It could be the healthiest woman, eating right, working out, and no history. Like I tell people, you can either have a family history or not,
Okay.
because no one else before my mother had ovarian cancer or any, cancer of that nature. So she was
And
the first.
it's really sobering. It's really sobering that um it's hard to diagnose. And
Yeah.
so I say to myself, I say to anybody listening out there, whether you're male, female, because you, even for men with their own personal health, you're raising daughters. It's paying attention and knowing your body, because you said something. You said your mom knew her body and she knew that it was different. So even though she delayed,
Yeah.
she knew that
Yes.
this was not how she really feels. So it's
Yes.
being in tune with that body. It's being like, you said earlier, like even taking the moment to selah, to relax, to pause, and
Yeah.
to breathe and come in tune with your body. And so many times we don't do that. We're going, 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 going.
Yeah.
So
And take care
that's
of
really
everyone
key.
else. And
Yeah.
the one thing about men, I tell men especially, because men are saying, oh, I can't develop ovarian cancer. Well, no, you can't, but you can carry the gene and pass it to your
What?
children because everybody has a BRCA1, BRCA2 gene. So
Okay.
you now have children, and let's say you have a gene mutation and you're a man, you can pass it on to your daughter if you have a daughter or a son. So I tell people, like, I've had my gene test, I'm negative, thank goodness. But my son, because of the lineage, they said, well, he needs to get a gene test eventually because it could have skipped. Could have gone from my mother, skipped me, and he could have the gene mutation. And if he has children, he could pass the gene mutation on to his children.
So it's a BRCA1 and 2 gene test.
Yes. And
So do you have to
I was
pay for that in the US?
I was very fortunate where I found out through, it was called the Magenta study, and it was various organizations, and it was a university out of Texas. And the Magenta study, I was able to qualify for this study, and I was able to get all these different gene tests done for free, because
Oh, that's good.
my one friend had a gene test done, and she said it cost her a few $1,000s.
Wow.
And the insurance picked up her tab because, unfortunately, in the same year I lost my mother, she lost her mother that October to ovarian cancer. So we're considered high risk,
Right.
but her
So they
insurance
want to do the
company
test.
picked up, she said, most of it. They didn't pick up all of it, but she said, yeah, when I saw the bill, it was a good amount of money. What if you don't have that? What if your
Yeah.
insurance company doesn't want to cover it?
And this is something definitely I'm going to look into on the Canadian side. So even though we have, OHIP and, free healthcare, for the most part, there's some things that are still not covered. Not all medications are covered. And sometimes people think that all medications are covered and all tests are covered. So
Yeah.
that is something that definitely going to look into. But let's continue with the journey with your mom, because we have, your mom.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I see a book. I see, how many books are you gonna write, Serena? You're just like full of books, because this story, it's like a movie,
Yeah. Well,
movie of
yeah.
health and wellness. Yeah.
That's
I see
my
why you're into wellness.
Yeah, my second poetry book, Crying Tears of Teal, is the poetry book that is around ovarian cancer awareness. And I wrote a lot of those poems at my mother's bedside because, as an artist, I tell people I went into my writing zone. That was my form of therapy because I was now traveling back and forth between Virginia and New York City, well, Queens, New York to be exact, almost every single weekend. I only missed about 2 weekends in 6 months,
Wow.
going back and forth. And one weekend, I will never forget, I was sick, and the other weekend, it was a blizzard. That was the only reason why I couldn't go up there. But yeah, I wrote a lot of poems at her bedside. It kept me sane because it's very easy to go and to fall into a very dark state of depression.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm watching my warrior, my knight in shining armor, you know, almost like my goddess
Mm-hmm.
dying. She
Yeah.
was my rock. She was my everything. She's a single mom. It was me and her. My
Yeah.
father never acknowledged me. So thank God for my grandparents. That's another story. Thank God for my uncle and aunt. And
Why you inspire me. This is why you're such a rock. This is why you inspire me. Could keep going.
yeah, so I'm like, God, and then you go into the why us, why me
Yeah.
phase,
Yeah.
why her.
Yeah.
We just lost my sister September 2007. And now my mother, and she fought. I mean, she said, I'm gonna fight this thing until I can't fight anymore. And that's what she
Good
did.
for her.
And they tried chemotherapy, the first round. And I mean, there's a term in the cancer world just overall, it's called chemo brain. So the first round of chemotherapy,
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen anything like this in my life. When I went to go visit her, she, thank goodness, her long term, it was like parts of your memory are just gone. Like the chemotherapy just wiped out parts of her memory. So my mom was the one that never wrote down like ATM pin numbers, people's phone numbers. She had like a Rolodex
Oh
in
my
her
God.
brain, and all of that was gone. I mean, luckily I had certain things. Luckily I had the bank card numbers and stuff, and stuff like that. But there were certain things that she lost after her first round of chemo, and it never came back to her.
So that's a good pausing moment again, Serena, because I just remember too when you talked about the wills, like your mom said, Serena, I need to sit down and have this conversation with you.
Yes,
And the chemo brain, and I think as moms and as parents, we need to do this before we're not ill, and sit down
yes,
and have the conversation about the will, and sit down and have the conversation about, where is your bank account, and
Yes.
if something happens to me, this is where my bank card is, and this is where my passwords are,
Yes.
sorry, all those little things, because we depend on our brain and we think that nothing's going to happen to us, but where is the backup? So
Yeah.
that's a really good reminder right there.
Yeah.
And so some things that I have some of those things in place,
Yeah.
but you're
Yeah.
reminding me to put some more things in place.
Yeah. And my mom was the type of person where, and I know there's folks out there that organize this way,
Yeah.
they have piles of paper and they know exactly where the piece of paper is in that pile. So they know in the middle of this pile, I'm going to pull this out, and here's my
Yeah.
birth certificate. I'm going to
Yeah.
pull this
Yeah.
out. But here I am looking at her piles. I don't know where stuff is. So I
And you're
literally had,
overwhelmed.
yeah, I'm like, what, where? And even my grandmother said, I'm not touching it. She told me, I can't, Serena, I just, And it was a certain point where me and my grandmother had to have the conversation about who's going to be my mother's health proxy. And my
Mhm.
grandmother couldn't do it. My grandmother was in her, she was in her 80s because my
Yeah.
grandmother's now
Yeah.
96. So she was in her 80s and she already lost two daughters. So she already lost two daughters in their 20s. One to AIDS, like I said, my sister's
Mhm.
mom, and her sister, because my grandmother adopted them and took them in as foster kids. And then my grandmother had a miscarriage many, many years ago. So she said, I lost three kids already. I'm losing my fourth child. She said,
Right.
and my mom was her eldest. She said, your mom is my first. And she said, I can't be her health proxy. She said, I'm in my 80s. I don't even, so I said, I will be her health proxy. You don't have to worry about it. And my Aunt Hilda stepped in and we were my mom's caregivers. So I told the hospital, do not call my grandmother with anything. She just can't take it. She just
Yes.
can't
It's too much.
take this. It's too much. So I said, I will take all the piles of paper off the table. And I literally I just put them in one big pile and I took them back to Virginia. And I went through each and every single sheet of paper and I just put them in order because I had to find certain things. Like I didn't know where her birth certificate was.
Right.
I
Right.
didn't know where this was. I didn't know where. And luckily, and then my mom just gave me her purse one day. Said, here's my purse, go for it. And luckily she had the important stuff like social
Go for
security
it.
number, the bank
Yeah.
cards.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
luckily I already had those PIN numbers before she lost them because
God.
I wasn't on any of her accounts. That was the other thing. So when she passed away, I was having trouble closing out accounts, proving who I was, because
Mhm.
I wasn't on anything.
So it's
But
yet another reminder about the organization doesn't just keep that, who's the backup on your bank account, because sometimes we don't want to put that backup on a bank account and we forget that,
yeah,
when you die they could shut down the account, and
yeah,
depending on which country you live in, they have different laws, who's
yes,
entitled, and then wills that go through probate, you don't have an executor to your will.
yeah.
And
Oh yeah,
I know
exactly.
we're talking about ovarian cancer and it sounds very ominous, but I think it's realistic that we have to prepare for anything in life, and it could come at any point in time, because your sister was younger and
Yeah,
in the prime, what we would say the prime of her life, but yet I say your mom was in the prime of her life, because I have friends that are in their 60s, 70s, and they're in the prime of their life, just really
yeah,
flourishing. So no matter
yeah,
what point, I think it's almost every year we have to update our
yeah.
stuff and make sure at least one or two people know where the important stuff is.
Yes, where
Yeah.
everything is, or have copies with somebody. Like here are my insurance policies. Here's this. Here's that. So yeah, so that was part of the journey. Was she went through the first round of chemotherapy, and some of her memory was lapsing. So the short-term memory was now starting to lapse. And I tell people she would ask me the same question sometimes 3 and 4 times within a matter of minutes because she forgot.
Right.
So
And
after
have a lot
some
of
weeks,
patience. Yeah.
yeah, I'm like, what just happened to my mother? I thought we were treating cancer here. Now her memory is gone.
Wow.
And so after some weeks, the short term memory came back. She could remember if she asked you a question.
Okay.
But then, I tell people like with her particular treatment, she was going through certain mood swings,
Mm,
so the chemotherapy was bringing out irritability. I've seen her irritable, but
nothing like that.
there was a level that hurt my feelings so much. I had to walk out in the hallway and cry in the nurse's arms, like, this is not my mother. She
Wow.
never has been like this towards me. And they said, it's not her,
It's a
it's the
medication.
chemo. It's the treatment. it kills off the bad stuff, it kills off the good stuff, and it could really, they were like, and plus she's still like in the throes of menopause. You got to remember that too, so it just kind of heightened certain things. So we really went through quite a journey. We had a lot of, we were very, very close before cancer. I mean, she was my best friend, and we had a lot of very intimate conversations, during her battle. And I think it was around end of January. It was because my birthday's in January. And when we
I
got
love
to,
you. See why I love you. January baby. Yeah, I didn't even know that. January baby. Keep going, Serena.
yeah, my birthday is January 16th. So my mom said she said, I had a prayer to God, and she said, I told God, she said, I know I can't tell you what to do, but please do not take me out of here on my daughter's birthday month. Please
Wow.
make me, like, let me die after her 35th. I don't want to die in the month of her birthday.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was,
That's
I tell
powerful.
people, it was like, that was what she told me, and she was actually on the phone with me on my birthday telling me this. She said, I
That's
told
love.
God, I want to see my daughter, not only just see her 35th, I want to see the whole month go out of here and then see a new month come in. And she passed away that February 19th, 2010. So
So
almost a month after my
really
birthday.
made it. She got her prayer answered.
Yeah, she got her prayer answered. And it was, it was hard because she passed, it's hard period, but she passed away on the 19th of February. And my grandfather's birthday would have been the 22nd. So my grandmother, she always grieves. We all grieve on my grandfather's birthday, but she said, now my daughter is gone, and so I said, okay, so the new thing was, okay, Nana will make sure that her funeral is not on Papa's birthday, you
Mm,
know. And we were now facing a blizzard coming in February. So we got the weather in New York, and it all worked out. I tell people, yeah, I tell people to this day, my mom died the way she wanted to die. She always said,
right.
if I die before my time, so even if it's way past my time, so whatever my time is. So if I live to be an old lady, or if I die as a young woman, I want to die peacefully.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to die knowing that I have forgave everyone. And that's what she did. She forgave
Ooh.
everyone. I tell people when she closed her eyes, there was no, you could sense when a person passes away and they're at peace. And that's what she was. And it was hard. I tell people, I had friends of mine who had already lost their moms, and now they were there for me like no other friends because they know exactly what I'm going through. And two of my friends called me when I was going up to New York on February 18th. And they said, Serena, we know you don't want to hear this. It's going to be the hardest thing you're going to have to say to your mother, but there may come a time where she's going to try to fight to stay here, and
Right.
you have to let her go. You have to tell her it's okay.
It's okay.
You have to give her permission. And they knew because they lost their mother in 2006.
Yeah.
But I tell
Yeah.
every doctor and oncologist I talk to, they said we see so many of our like advanced stage patients, like ovarian cancer patients. They said we're still baffled. Like, why is there not a test? Why is there not an accurate way to see this coming so we can catch it in the earlier stages? So it could be reversed. We have 80% that we could catch in the earlier stages and only 20% in the latter, or even, more than that. But it's
That
I
that
tell
blows my
people,
mind. That really blows my mind because it's the one thing, it's the place, it's the reproductive organs of a woman. It's a
yeah,
part that gives life.
yeah, it's the
And
part that gives life that can really, it was 6 months from the time she was diagnosed to the time she passed away. It was like 6 months and 10 days.
wow, Serena.
And,
And you know
and I
what?
know,
I really thank you for because I know no matter how long the time has passed, and I even have a friend on here, Wendy, who's saying she was talking about relating to what you're saying about the chemotherapy with her
yeah,
mom. You know, it's never easy when you
no,
have to share that story because
yeah.
it's still part of your, she's still part of your heart, she's still part of your
Oh,
life, she's a living, it's a living testimony, and you're a reflection of who she is. So I am so grateful and honored that you would share her story with us and your story
oh,
with
thank
us.
you.
And like,
Okay.
I think about like, how did you find peace in the midst of all of this? Because I know you found peace. Because just knowing, just
Ooh.
listening to you, you
Mhm.
found peace somewhere in the middle of it. So you were writing the stories, and so
Yeah.
I know the colors of the. Let me make sure I put it in the chat. So crying tears of teal,
Yes.
right? And you wrote that at your mom's bedside.
And
So
it's
what
funny
else did
because
you use?
yeah, I didn't know that was going to be a book. I was just
Oh,
writing poems. I would write in my journal. I'd write in my laptop, and then she would have these moments where she would just sleep for hours. It could be midday. She didn't even know what time it is sometimes because she was sleeping so much. So when she would wake up, I would be at her bedside, and she would say, "Oh, I know you've been writing. Share with me what you wrote. It'll make me happy, in the midst of this pain." And I would just share with her my poems, and just knowing that it would give her some sort of peace. And then also, I tell people the one thing that I really that helped me along the way is I'm a Christian, and I couldn't go to church on Sundays. I love my church
mhm.
home, Ebenezer AME in Fort Washington, Maryland. I could not go because I was in New York every single weekend.
Yeah.
So I reversed it, and I would go to Bible study every Wednesday, and I had a circle of prayer warriors,
Yeah.
and they would pray for me, pray with me. I got counseling and therapy through it all. I got it through my mom's illness. I got it way after. I mean, like I tell people, I was in therapy and counseling for a long while after she passed away because I had just stopped counseling from losing my sister. And
Hmm.
I was like trying to still find peace with
Right.
her. And we're like thrown back into this all over again. So between the power of prayer and my mom was very comedic during all this. It's very funny how she found a sense of humor in all this. And it was literally, she would tell me the weeks coming, it was leading up to, the day she passed away. But the day she died, it was a few hours before she passed away. And she says, Serena, I know my time is coming, and she said, the hospital asked me, do you want to go to hospice? Where do you want to go? Because you're terminal. We can't keep you here. And she said, well, I'm not going anywhere else. She said, so I told them, just kind of get over it. I'm just going to stay here. And the doctor was like, how do you like answer that? So, but she told me, she was telling me things, and she says, I know you're sad. She said, I'm sad because she says, I'm not a grandmother yet. I wanted to see my grandchildren.
Mm.
So now I'm sitting here baffled because I'm like, well, what are you talking about? I'm single. I don't have anybody in my life. And it was almost like I tell people, I truly believe this. When a person is close to transitioning, they can see things that we can't see
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
human eye. And she said, you're going to be a magnificent mother to my
Oh, yeah.
grandchild. And then she said, no, no, no. She's like, you have, because I have a lot of godsons. So she said, I can see you with a son. I see you with my grandson. I wasn't pregnant. I wasn't dating anybody, nothing. Okay. So, but she also told me, you have to make a promise to me to not try and follow me. She was like, when I pass away, I don't want to see you at those gates anytime soon. I'm going to throw you back. So she was like,
Mm.
this, I was like, please don't throw me back. Okay, just like push me away. She said, no, I gotta just, because she said you're stubborn, so I'd have to throw you back. Like, nope, we're not ready for her yet.
Yeah.
So I just go back in time, and just I go back on the good times that we
Mhm.
had, and as a family, it wasn't always perfect, but it takes time. I tell people there's no time to say in a year I'm going to feel better. 2 years
Exactly.
I'll feel better.
Yeah.
It's
Grief is a
no,
process.
you just don't know. It's a process.
Yeah.
And the one group that really helped me get through is I was going through counseling at a center called Life with Cancer.
Mm-hmm.
So Life with Cancer is here in Fairfax, Virginia. And then I was also a part of the DC Metro chapter of the National Ovarian Cancer Coalition. They would have meetings. And they were really great to me. They would just embrace me and everything, but the counseling and the therapy and everything came free of charge. I never paid for a counseling
That's
session, a
amazing.
therapy session. It was a nonprofit organization and they paid for it. But I was a part of a support group. And we were all in the same support group as caregivers. It was about 10 of us. And one by one, I'm telling you, over a course of like 2 or 3 months, all of our loved ones literally died back to back to back. All like,
Wow.
it's like all 10 of us lost our loved ones in a matter of like 2, 3 months. And now we were in what was called the Good Grief Group, which I like the name Good Grief, like Charlie Brown. So, and the counselor once, I mean, the one thing I took away with it, she said, grief is not a bad thing,
Yeah, it isn't.
that we all have to grieve. And she said, there are stages of grief. And they taught us the stages of grief.
Hmm.
And between them and the ovarian cancer support group, there was actually a support group in that same center of women that have ovarian cancer and GYN cancers. They invited me in on their group meetings. They wanted me there. And they said, Serena, this is when my mom was still alive. And I would just come to their meetings and they wanted to know her progress.
Hmm.
And I was talking to women who were stage 4. This is another thing. Some women who were stage 4 ovarian
Right.
cancer and came back and
Right.
they were in remission, like they were in full remission. So they
That's
said, you
amazing.
just don't know which way this cancer can
It's gonna
go.
go. Yeah.
But they were very encouraging. They stayed at my side for a very long time. I'm still in touch with quite a few of them, over a decade later. But the one thing I learned from those ladies is they live life to the utmost fullest. They said, God gave us a second chance. A lot of us were advanced stages and now we're in remission. So I really, like you was asking me before, my inspiration, they're my women like them are my inspiration.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
the support group I was in, we all lost. I was the only one in the support group that was a caregiver to a parent. Everyone else was a caregiver to a spouse or an elder, but it wasn't their parent.
Right.
So I was the only one. I was actually like one of the youngest ones in the room too. But that's what really, that's where I found peace, getting back to the
Hmm.
peace. And it takes time. I
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
angry. I was sad. There were times where I would scream, get mad at God. Why did you do this to me? Why did you
Yeah.
take my mother?
Yeah.
You have to get it out,
Right.
but you eventually find that peace. And I tell people all the time, you're going to have trouble finding it, so get help. It's not easy. So you don't have to do this by yourself, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
get the proper help, get the counseling, get the therapy, pray, whoever you believe in, pray, but peace does come. Like they say, joy does come in the morning.
Yeah.
And I tell people all the time, I swear my mother sent my son to me because he was born a year and a half after she passed away. Because he was born August 2011. And I got pregnant that later that year, not knowing I had no intention on getting pregnant. That was
Mama
not,
knows. Mama
it,
knows. And Mama
and
sees.
yeah, even my son reminds me because I told him the story that my mom told me. I said, my
Yeah.
mom always said she saw a grandson. And I said, I always think I was like, she sent you to me.
Yeah.
So he tells me that sometimes. He's 9. He's like, remember, Mom, Grandma sent me
So watch yourself. Don't watch yourself,
to make you happy. I'm like, oh gosh, here we go.
So one of my good friends is on the line, Wendy, and she says, and she has a teardrop. She goes, she's saying everything I went through.
Oh, hi,
And,
Wendy.
and
Yeah,
never being afraid to seek help. And that's the piece of it, that,
yes.
and especially for women, when we're always a strong woman, and then especially for Black women, we tend not to go and seek counseling, and we tend to
Oh,
try and go and like get over it or suck it up. And so,
and
you
Black men
know,
too. They don't want
yeah,
to see counseling or therapy. I'm like, we need counseling and therapy in this family. We just lost my mom.
yeah,
And not a lot of us went. I mean, I got help and a couple of others, but some just refused.
yeah. And if you
Just,
don't have a friend, like, from, one of the things I'm blessed with, I have a couple friends that are just counselors or life coaches. And so
yeah.
even though some of the most challenging times in my life, I know I can turn to them. And I have the prayer warriors that
Yes,
they pick me up and they know, like, what's going on, you know, but it's also
yes.
being honest with the process, because sometimes, we say we're okay and we're really not okay,
We're not. No.
or we don't know how to answer the question. And sometimes we just need to say, I don't know, or
Yeah.
thank God for sometimes, I think, for social media, because we could probably put in a little emoji, so then the other
Yeah.
person can get it. But if anybody is joining now on the live or on the replay, I'm talking to my new sister friend that I met a few months ago through Dr. Vibe.
Yes, thank
And
you, Dr. Bob.
Dr. Vibe, I know you're in there somewhere. And we just connected, and Dr. Vibe said, "You need to talk to Serena." I go, "Yeah, I know, I do." And
Yeah.
we're talking about it's Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month, and we're at the end of the month. But I always say, you know what, the first shall be the last, and the last shall be the first. So even though we're at the end of the month, it's still something that has to
Yeah.
happen, and
Yeah.
something that we need to be aware about. And there's so much to learn. So if you have not gotten the gist of ovarian cancer and some of the signs and symptoms and what to do, as Serena shares the story of herself and of her mom, go watch the replay, rewind.
Yeah.
It'll be living live, and I'll put it on my YouTube page as well. So, and I'm so grateful that you know you are sharing this, and now you have your son, you found your peace, and you're learning. So you're sharing so many nuggets, and I love when your mom said, one of the things I'm getting out of it, she loved like a champion. She loved,
Yes.
she
Oh,
did the agape love. She loved beyond measure, and she
yes.
laughed, and she laughed more,
Mm-hmm.
so that reconciling with life and living life to the fullest. And if we could even just take a minute and remember, and even with this moment with COVID and everything that's happening in the world upside down,
Yeah.
are we even living life and sitting in the moment, living in the now?
Yeah.
And then she
Yeah.
talked about forgiveness. She made sure that she forgave everyone. So,
And yeah.
we should all even just stop and say, okay, who have I not forgiven today? Why are we waiting till the end, to forgive? And I know sometimes it's hard. Our pride gets in the way, our hurt gets in the way, our emotion gets in the way.
Yes.
So, and this is why, Serena, this is why I have this conversation. This is why I'm doing this podcast. It's not from, I'd love to make some money one day. Maybe somebody will come and sponsor, so we can have more and more people, and we can have the super best equipment, and we can send it all over the world.
There you go.
But it's really about, you inspiring me inspiring you, and then we become even better and stronger so that we can live that life.
Yes.
And so you've been through so much, and we're gonna have to do a second show, I know, because some of y'all don't know her story with Lyme disease. And I am, so wait a second. Did you have,
Yeah.
okay, let me say a minute. Where is Lyme disease in all of this, hon?
Yeah, I know. It's the timeline. And someone asked me, like, what's the timeline going on? So I tell people I lost my mom February 2010. I had my son August 2011. And then September 2012. And I'll never forget the day. It was mid-September 2012. My son was only 13 months old. And, I just went for a nature walk. And just to give y'all some background about me, I was a marathon runner. So I was training for my 6th marathon. So walks and long runs was a part of my lifestyle. And that was actually something else that helped me bring peace to myself.
Exercise.
During my mother's illness, I was training for a marathon, and she told me don't stop. I said, what do you mean? She says, you have to run that marathon. She said, plus when you run, it gives you comfort and joy and peace. So I just went out I don't usually do nature walks like where the bushes and stuff are and they rub against your arms. I like a paved trail where I can see where I'm going and you can observe nature, but it's
Yeah.
a distance.
Yeah. That would be me.
Yeah, that's me. Like, oh, the trees are over there and the bushes over there, and they swat a fly, because they're it's far away.
Yeah.
But this particular day, I was at it was a new job, and my coworkers said, "Oh, Serena, come with us on this nature walk." And something in my gut told me, take the regular trail that you usually take. But I said, no, I want to go with my coworkers. I'm new. I want to get to know them. And there was about 10 of us in this group. And we go, and I just sensed like everything was closing in on me because there were just bushes and trees were just kind of right up on you. And I remember as I was walking, I felt something on my arm. And I looked at my right arm and it said, oh, it's like, it just looked like, a bug. I said, oh, let me just get this bug off of me. and it just wouldn't quite come off. Like it just wouldn't come off.
Right.
So it finally came off, and I thought nothing of it. Just left like a little bump. And I said, okay, well, I said I won't do this again. You know. And fast forward like a week, maybe a week or so went
Yeah.
by, and I was out, with my job again at an event outdoors. And I remember having this cough, but it was like you felt something rattling in your lungs, but nothing was coming up. I'm used to like just taking some Mucinex and,
Good.
drying it. But
Yeah.
it was just different. I'm like, well, maybe it's the change of season because it's going towards the end of September here. And then I used to African dance. Well, I'm back to African dancing. It took me years to get back to
Right.
African dancing because this was 2012. I used to African dance 2, 3 times a week.
Wow.
And class is an hour and a half long. And I could not get past the first 15, 20 minutes without being out of breath. And so, okay, here I am, a marathon runner. I'm used to running 26.2 miles, and dancing through class. And I danced my whole pregnancy with my son. That's the story that my dance teachers say. This girl's on the dance floor until about a month or so before she gave birth, So
Yeah.
I could not, and it wasn't just a regular shortness of breath. It was like I really could not catch my breath.
That's scary.
I said, well, maybe this is that cough I couldn't figure out last week.
Mhm.
And then, I started feeling a little better. And so I went for a run like the following week. And, it was my 6 mile run and I couldn't even get past mile 2. And that's when I knew. And I had my son in the jogging stroller and I was out of breath. I said, I have to get back to my SUV in case I pass out here because something is wrong. And that's what started the journey. I didn't know I had Lyme disease. I didn't know I was bitten by a tick. But that's what started leading to all the misdiagnoses I went through. And that was the first doctor's appointment was October 1st, 2012. And that was the first very wrong diagnosis. And it just kept snowbarreling. It was just a snowball of just wrong, just like how my mom went in the ER and they said, here
Yeah.
you go with some Imodium AD, have a nice day. It was that kind of misdiagnosis, just completely off. And the one doctor there were 2 doctors that kind of knew something was up.
Hmm.
One was retiring. He was leaving literally that week. He says, I wish I could help you, but I'm retiring from medicine this week. But he says something something is in your body and it is running rampant. He said, I can't put my finger on it, but for you to be a marathon runner,
Wow.
African dancer, traveling the world, you know, and like practically being bedridden in a matter of weeks, there's something really wrong here. And then another doctor said, I think something is wrong neurologically. I started having twitches and
Yeah.
spasms
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
but it took weeks and weeks. And after 10,
Oh my
like I was
God.
I was misdiagnosed 10 times before I got to a doctor who said, I'm going to sit here and figure this out until we have the proper diagnosis.
10 times.
It was actually 9 times. The 10th time came after my diagnosis because one doctor didn't want to believe I had Lyme disease. And they were trying to diagnose me with something else. Even though I had the paperwork, I have the blood work. Oh no, you don't have Lyme disease, you have this. But yeah, it was rough. And so yeah, that's the timeline. So the one thing I tell people when you lose someone like a loved one like your mom, your dad, you're still healing. So I'm
Yes.
still healing from those losses and I get bitten by a tick. And my doctor said, I think that's why your symptoms were exacerbated the way they were
The
because
stress added to the piece with the,
it's
yeah.
stress on top of stress on top of you had a child just last year, your body's still healing from that to, oh, you're a single mom because that's a whole rejection story in itself to,
Yeah.
and now, and I got bit by the tick, it just went crazy in my body to the point where I have lesions in my brain. Like it got into my brain.
What?
So yeah, Lyme disease, that's a whole story in itself. That's a whole
Okay.
episode.
We're going to set up an episode on
Yeah.
Lyme disease. We are
Yeah.
going to set that up.
But yeah, I'm still grieving over my mom. And I tell people all the while, even though I was sick with Lyme disease, I never stopped advocating for ovarian
Ovarian
cancer,
cancer.
GYN cancer. It's like I told my mom I will not stop until God takes me home. So I said, even if it's just little things, here and there, I was still working on my books. And, at that time I was in several anthologies. I didn't have my own published book yet.
Yeah.
And the first thing that happened when I got sick was, if I check out of here tomorrow, there's certain things I want to have, like my books. I want to have
Yeah.
my own books with my
Yeah.
name on the cover. I want to leave a legacy for my son. Like in that terms, I'm a writer, but I'm in other people's books. So I
Right.
don't have my own. So I literally published my first book during the depths of Lyme disease. I was like in IV treatments getting my first book together.
You have definitely shown how to find the opportunities on the crisis, how to take the power in the pain, how to take the triumph over the trauma. You, this is why I have you on here. And for those that are now joining, I'm talking with Serena, and we're talking about ovarian cancer because it's Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month, and she tells the story about her journey and the journey of her mom. And I knew she had Lyme disease because I've read about it and heard her on Dr. Vibe talk about the Lyme disease. So, and
Yeah.
for me, anybody going through this type of a journey would have a message that we all need so that we could, because no matter what the journey you're on, these wisdom nuggets that you have dropped along the way, even fortifies me. It's given me, like, I know I had a stressful day and I'm getting energized,
Oh,
even
thank
though the story has, the moments of seriousness, the moments of,
you. Yeah.
of trauma,
Hmm.
but yet still there is life coming out of you, and there's life coming out of this story, and there's the power of love and truth, and legacy. Now we're talking about leaving the legacy.
Yes.
What would you say to your younger self? Wendy says you're a hero. Yes, she is one of my sheroes. She is on my sheroes list.
Yeah,
She is on my sheroes list. She is. And now you're on Wendy's sheroes list too.
oh gosh,
You're
thank
gonna
you.
love Wendy because Wendy plays the steel pan and she teaches steel pan, and she has a plethora of. She runs a steel pan organization, and the amount
Oh,
of adopted children she has, and she has her own son, and she's always giving to the community. So,
wow.
somehow I gotta create a Zoom meeting to meet, bring all these sheroes together. We're gonna do like a
Yeah,
private
that
Zoom
would
meeting and bring all
be.
these
We
sheroes
love
together.
that because I grew up around. My mom was a professional African dancer, so I grew up around the musical instruments, the drums. That's
Stop.
why I love. We used to go to
You need to
every
come to
festival.
Toronto. You're coming to Toronto when this COVID is
I think
over, because my sister is an African dancer. She's trained West
oh,
African dancer,
yeah.
and we are all around drummers and dancers.
Oh, I love it.
So
I
you
love
would
it.
have, and Toronto has, without COVID, we have Afrofest.
Yes.
So
Hmm.
you would totally enjoy that. And then we have the Mutati Drumming Festival,
Yeah, and Carabana and all that. Yep.
all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So you're gonna enjoy all of this. So
Yeah.
knowing,
Yes.
so you are at still a different level of the prime of your life. So what would you say to that younger self that may have been stressing, or what would you say to her now?
Okay. It depends if I was in my 20s or 30s. So I tell
You
people
choose, you pick, you pick.
it's crazy because when I turned 30, me and my mom had so many plans. I mean, literally the year when she got sick, she was planning on moving here to Virginia. She wanted to move closer to me. She wanted to say, you know what, I'm done with New York. I'm going to pack
Mhm,
up me and my daughter Christina, that's my sister,
mhm.
and make sure, she wanted to make sure my grandmother was okay. But she says, it's time for me to like live my life. I want to buy a house and move to Virginia and, do certain things. There's certain things when she passed away, she didn't get a chance to do, and the one thing I would tell my younger self, because there were times where I hesitated
Mhm.
on doing things. And my mother told me before she died, don't wait for anybody. Don't wait for anything. She's been telling me that. She told me that when I was 24. I'll never forget when I was 24. I'll never forget the year because I wanted to go to Africa. And I was waiting for friends. We were all supposed to go together.
Don't wait for anybody.
My
Okay.
mom said, do not wait for these friends. She was like, because you will regret waiting for them. And long story short, my friend Rashida lived in South Africa at the time. I was the only one on that plane in 2000 visiting my friend. If I had waited for the friends, I would have never got on that plane to South Africa to go. And my mom kept instilling in me to not wait. But sometimes you still wait for folks. You still
Yeah.
wait for opportunities. You still wait and you're hesitant. And that's the one thing, if I could rewind time, there's certain areas of my life I wish I didn't wait and just go full throttle. Just say, you
You're
know
making
what?
me think, girlfriend.
Yeah,
Really,
we're going to go here. We're going to go there.
do not wait for friends.
Don't wait for
Not
friends.
done.
Oh no, don't wait for, sometimes you can't wait for loved ones. You just gotta push through. And that's the one thing after she passed away, she had seen me publish in anthologies, but that was my one regret.
Right.
And she had, it's funny because she had like the first official draft of my first poetry book. It was in a binder and it was on the coffee table. And she had the first one, and my friend, who is another story, he won the second draft at an auction. I auctioned off a journal with the poems in it for a good cause. So but she had the original binder. And I said, you know what? I have to birth these books. I have books in my
Yeah.
laptop, plural, like books on top of books on top of books. And I just, that's what I would tell my younger self, like, girl, you got so much talent and so many gifts that you're sitting on.
Hmm.
Go for it. Don't think about money. Don't think about, oh, how am I going to do this? How am I going to fund this? How am I, or, oh, so and so's not coming with me. I want my friend to come with me. Or, no, just stop all that and just go forth and do what you're supposed to do. I didn't know at that time I was walking into my purpose. I
Hmm.
didn't know in my 20s and 30s. And even with health and wellness coaching, I didn't see that coming at all
Hmm.
until I got sick and started learning all about integrative health and holistic health and being a healing presence and different ways to heal the body. And that's the one thing my mom wanted to learn about was
Mm.
she didn't want to just do chemotherapy. She wanted to do herbal treatments and
The alternative
other
cures.
things
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
acupuncture and so I that was another divine detour I call it, and it was a divine detour to get me on the path I'm supposed to be on. But yeah, that's what I would tell my younger self and anyone out there who's stumbling and waiting for people, waiting for this one or waiting for that loved one, especially if you're with, it's hard when you may be married or with a spouse
Mhm.
or, you may be waiting for them. And there were times where I was dating people and I was waiting for them to catch up to me. And I'm like, I can't.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I got to keep going forward with or without you.
Walk,
So,
walk in your purpose on the way to your destiny. I love it. Don't wait. And you know what? Sometimes we're always wait. We're always looking for that validation, or we don't want
yeah,
to go it alone, or we're not sure. And that's a big one. I hope people have been writing this stuff down because I have my papers. If you see me bending down, it's because I'm writing my note and I'm
I
putting that note to the side, and then I'm gonna be typing it into. No, this to
love
me
it.
is like this is how I learn to be my best self every
Yeah.
day, and it's having these conversations. So I feel so blessed
Oh, thank
um,
you. I'm
to
blessed
even have
too.
this here with this conversation.
Thank you.
um, so as we start to wind down, is there hmm, I have like five questions going through my head and I'm going like, Nicole, just narrow it down, just narrow it down. Is there a significant moment of victory that stands out for you when you think about what do you think about, and you can go any which way you want, what do you think about advocating for ovarian cancer, Lyme disease, or even just something else in life that is a victorious moment that stands out for you?
Mm, wow. Yeah, there's a few actually, but I'll narrow it down too. So since we're in Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month, these last
Mhm.
few hours, I will never forget when I finally decided Crying Tears of Teal was going to be a book. And it's funny because my mom put that gem in me before she died. She said, Serena, all these poems you've been sitting here writing at my bedside, you need to share them with the world because you helped me. So I was in some very dark hours of my life, and I would just still read your poems after you would leave,
Mhm.
or when I knew, I was in Virginia, she's in New York, and she kept some of my poems and she would read them. Sometimes her vision was blurry because that's what cancer and chemotherapy will do to you too.
Right.
But when I finally decided, and I tell people, I was working on it very slowly. It took years to realize this needs to be a book because I was still,
Mhm.
now I'm going through my own health battle and, all this other stuff. So Reconstruction came out first. That's the very first book, Reconstruction Pieces of Life, Volume 1. Then Crying Tears of Teal came out
Mhm.
2017. And the way that came out was I would work on it here and there and I would put the book down. You work on it more and you put the book down. Well, there were a lot of layoffs at a job I was at. I was at this job for 5 years. During my battle of Lyme disease, I was at a job that was very challenging. I'll just say that. It was a lot of blessings out of this job, a lot of great people, but very challenging. And I got laid off February 2017. And I will never forget that week. I came home, and the first thing I did, you cry your tears.
Mhm.
Like, okay, I got let go. Was there 5+ years? Okay, fine.
Mhm.
And the first thing I did was my creative juices started coming back because all that stress from that job rolled off my back when they let me go.
Mhm.
And unfinished poems, unfinished pieces of that book started coming to me. It was like just a waterfall
Mhm.
of just creativity. And I told myself, okay, Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month is September. I want this book to be out by this September.
Right.
It might sound crazy. I just got laid off from this job, but I'm going to do it. And I called my team up. I called my editor. I already had the cover art for the
Mhm.
book. And I called my friend. I had to get all my agreements in order because I tell people that's another thing we talk about in my self-publishing workshops. You got to make sure your paperwork
Is in
is
order.
tight.
Right.
And get the agreements. If you have artwork in your book, make sure the agreements are in place. But I told them I'm going to birth this book this September, and I had so many supporters, like so many just people pushing me.
Mm.
And that was it because I didn't have a job anymore. I don't have an
Right.
excuse.
Right.
My son's in
Right.
school. He's in school from 8 a.m. and he's in aftercare, and I dare not pick him up before 6 p.m. because he have an attitude problem. So okay, play with your friends. So I would write all day, and I birthed my book that September, Crying Tears of Teal. But when I was doing it, I started reaching out to organizations that also raise awareness around GYN cancers
Right.
and ovarian cancer and told them about my book project. And when I reached out to the National Ovarian Cancer Coalition, huge shout out to them. And I told them my story. I said, through the DC Metro chapter, I said I would come to the meetings. They greatly helped me out. After my mom passed away, I was
Right.
volunteering. I said, so I'm really aware of your work. And I sent them actually like the first samples of my book. I sent them free copies. I sent them everywhere. I sent them around the country. And they emailed me back. They wrote me a letter. I still have the letter hanging up on my door because it was the most encouraging letter. It was a beautiful letter. And they said, we have your book in our lobby.
Mhm.
How can we work with you? How can we want to learn more about your story? But they said we've never seen a book like this written about ovarian cancer. They said it's always like we're in the mix of a book. Like here's a chapter on ovarian cancer, here's a
Mhm.
paragraph.
Mhm. Mhm.
But they said it's an entire book dedicated to raising awareness through poetry,
Right.
around ovarian cancer and GYN cancers, but
Yeah.
particularly ovarian cancer. And it was a beautiful partnership that just took off. And I went to their national conference that April. I met lots of women and men who we still keep in touch, and now we're partnering
Right.
and raising money and doing stuff. And it's just, and all of us lost someone. Some of us is the ones who, a lot of the folks who head up the various chapters are actually cancer survivors of ovarian cancer, and they've been living in remission for many years now. But the ones that I've been partnering with very closely, like there's a set of sisters in Austin, Texas, and they lost their mom,
Mm.
a little bit after I lost my mom.
Right.
And you hear all the stories, I met a mom who lost her daughter to ovarian cancer. So, we're all just coming together. And I said, there's something going on here that's divine. This
Yeah.
is all divine order.
Sounds like it.
I was like, it didn't just happen.
Yeah.
And I tell people it's not about, for me, book sales, like, oh, I want to make this amount of money. It's about raising awareness. And when I knew that I could do that through this book, that was victory for me. Like, I can now put my books in the hands of people that may like poetry, maybe they don't like poetry, but they're like, this is a poetic way we can learn about her journey and other people's journeys about through ovarian cancer and even
Feeling
survivors.
it feels it feels like when I hear it, and I know I still have to get my copy of the book, but I was like, I'm not waiting for the copy of the book to get it because we just like, no, we're gonna do this show.
Okay.
And I see the victory in it. I see the victory in the moment. I see the opportunity in the crisis. I see, how people are healing. Like you just to hear what the Cancer Society said that
Yes.
deals with this speaks
Yes.
volumes to what you have been able to put pen to paper, and how even in the midst of it you were able to channel that energy
Yeah.
into a different place. I have two comments here, no question about it. And Wendy says she has reminded me of this: put on tender mercies, kindness, self-love, humility, meekness, long suffering, and love, and
Mm.
you're a shiro. You are a
Oh,
great example of being a survivor.
thank you. I tell people, when you lose so much, you're a survivor. If you can still wake up in the morning and
Yeah.
find joy, and even those who wake up in the morning and they're still struggling, they're fighting to get through their day. They're a survivor,
And it's the gratitude piece, is trying to remember the gratitude piece. And I from one of the things I've like learned to do, because I know that I'm not always good at it, because when the sadness comes in or depression or you're just not having a good day, I'm literally, Serena, putting reminders on my phone.
Mm,
Like, whatever it is, think of joy, or pray this, or speak life. Like there's an alarm that goes off on my phone that says speak life. So
mm,
even if I'm in a meeting, it will still pop up on my phone. So I remember to speak life to myself and to speak life to someone else. So,
yeah,
you talked about the chemo brain and how we can forget. It's just, I think naturally when stress happens, and even in this moment of COVID, we're forgetting a lot. I know I've been forgetting more. So I have my phone is full of alarms
yeah,
just to remind ourselves to even breathe,
yeah.
to even breathe. And, you talked about the self-compassion in the beginning. And
Mm,
again, I am so grateful for you being on here. So if there is, just before we share with people how they can get a hold of you,
okay.
is there anything else that you would love to share about ovarian cancer awareness, or a nugget, a quote? Wendy had a question. What is your favorite inspiration? Um,
There's a few.
Pick one, Serena. Pick one. Rapid
Yeah,
fire. Pick one.
I would say when I'm in a very, because you get there. Sometimes I tell people it'll be a moment,
Mhm.
or like my mom used to love wind chimes. So now I have wind chimes, and
Okay.
sometimes if I hear a wind chime, I feel like as if she's a way of her talking to me, but sometimes it makes me sad because I remember growing up as a little girl having wind chimes in the windows because of her and waking up to wind chimes. So, I tell people, my inspiration is sometimes I just have to, I call it a reset, or like I have to pause and reset. And my son even knows, like, oh, mommy's going to go off and pray. I'm like, I have to go pray. I have to I love certain gospel songs, they get me back to where I need to be,
Yeah.
and they inspire me. And then sometimes just going back and looking at, other shows, like I have a friend of mine who passed away last year, and she had ovarian cancer, was in remission from it, and passed away of another cancer, but you want to talk about a warrior. I mean, you just Google her name and she shows up. She did interviews and radio shows, and
Okay.
And just hearing her, even though she's gone, still breathes
I have a
inspiration.
feeling I know who you're talking about. Why don't you tell the people her name? Because I think
Yeah,
I heard you mention
yeah,
her before.
yeah. We did a tribute on the Dr. Vibe show to her. Her name's
And he's
Tara.
listening now. He just said hi. Okay.
Hi, Dr. Vibe. Yes, we did on the Dr. Vibe show just last week. Her name's Tara Lassard, and we used to do the ovarian cancer awareness shows together. I met her April of 2018 at the National Ovarian Cancer Coalition conference. You want to talk about inspiration? Just be in a vending hall full of survivors of this cancer, all walks of life, young and old. I even met a little girl, 9 years old, who was a survivor of ovarian cancer. You know, because you could be a child and have this cancer. That's inspiration to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tara was, she had that kindred spirit. Like, you know, you meet her, you would have loved her, Nicole. You meet her and you feel like you've known her for decades. Like you just feel
Right.
like you know her whole
Like how I
family.
feel about you right now. Okay.
Yeah, it's just that connection. Yeah, that's how I feel about you. And you have to remember, like, wow, I just met them X, Y, and Z ago.
Yeah.
And I remember telling Dr. Vibe, you know, I said, I want to do an ovarian cancer awareness show, but I want to do it with this woman right here. I cannot do it without her. So, you know, she just passed away December 26th of 2019.
Can you spell her name? Because Wendy's asking, can you repeat her name? Is it T?
Yeah,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
Tara, so Tara, and then her last name is Lassard, Lessard, as in David, Tara Lassard. And she was a photographer, so you may run into her website. She was a wonderful photographer, wonderful artist, but she was an ovarian cancer advocate till the day she died, literally until the day she died. She was only 47. Um, yeah,
Wow.
only because we were 3 years apart. Yep. Yeah. So she would have been 40, 48 this year. So yeah, her
That's
birthday was
powerful.
also this month. So it's Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month, but her
Yeah.
birthday was also this month.
Powerful.
But Dr. Vibe and I wanted to do something extra special because he met her and he could tell you he just fell in love with her. You just fall in love with this
Yeah.
girl. And yeah, and then when you meet her mom and her sister and her whole family, her dad, you're like, this is where it comes from. Like it's the whole
Yeah.
family. You fall in love with them. But God rest her soul. She was another one, stage 4 ovarian cancer. They said, oh, you probably have like a year to live. They fired those doctors. They were like, goodbye, fired them.
Yeah.
And she went into remission. Like she got treatment and went into
Yeah.
remission. Those other doctors wrote her off, you know, but then
You
the
gotta
cancer,
advocate, advocate,
yeah,
advocate, advocate. Yeah.
yeah. Her and her mother and her family, they said, no, we don't like that answer. And they advocated. So her name's Tara Lassard, and I miss her dearly. She would definitely have been in the show with me if she was here. And I know she's here.
She is here because you know your spirit is emanating, her spirit is emanating through what you're saying and knowing the impact she's had on your life. And even Dr. Vibe right now, he's having some emotions right now. And for me, I can tell you, you know, you see, I almost called you Tara. Holy Moses, Batman. Um, it's a reminder of how we need to value each other while we're alive,
Yes.
value our friends, value our loved ones, even learn from our who we call our enemies or frenemies, whatever they are, that
Yeah.
everybody has a lesson to give. And this too is the reason why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Excuse me, because we have to share our stories, we have to help each other along the journey. And you know, I just did a podcast, I did a 3-part series, and I'm going to release the third part is out on podcast land, on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, but it calls Iron Sharpens Iron.
Mm.
And you know,
Yeah.
when you have a knife, it requires another same metal to
Yes.
sharpen it. And you can't sharpen a knife with a piece of plastic or anything else. It has to be something of the same material. And so this is where we sharpen each other. So it's so important that we sharpen each other as friends,
Yes.
as mentors, as people. It's the only way we can get through it. We have to be like, I say we have to be like double-edged swords, you know? I look
Yeah.
at like, you know, you're now one of the iron sharpeners in my life.
Oh,
Dr. Vibe is definitely an iron sharpener in my life. Wendy, who's online, is an iron sharpener. I see my godmother on here. She's in New York.
Oh,
She's been another iron sharpener in my life since I was, before I knew myself. She knew me before
yeah.
I knew myself.
Yes.
And it's those nuggets along the way and the people in our life.
Yeah.
So again, Serena, like, yeah, I'm looking forward to the many conversations that we're going to have
Me too.
offline and
Yes.
online,
Yes.
homeschooling kids, and,
Yes.
living life, African dance, the culture, I see it. I see the series,
Yeah.
when he says, blessings and thank you. But how do people find you, Serena?
Sure.
Um,
Sure. Thank you again for this time. This was great. So people can find me a couple of ways. I wear a couple of hats, as you've learned. So I
no, more
am
than a couple, girlfriend, more than a couple.
more than a couple. I'm trying to look. So, what I did was I put all my hats into two websites. So
Okay.
I have two websites. So the author, writer, publishing coach, workshop facilitator is serenawills.com. So that's SERENAWILLS.com. And there you will find my books. I'll put one up here. This is Crying Tears of Teal. This is the one about
And I
ovarian.
wore teal just for you. I had to go
Thank
find
you.
this.
Thank you. And just one quick share I've been doing this month. I have a fundraising package on my website,
Okay.
and 75% of the proceeds have been going back to organizations that are raising awareness around ovarian cancer. So that's
Well,
Serena Wood.
people, okay, we're going to pause for a cause here for
Okay.
the commercial. That if you go to serenawells.com and you
Yes.
purchase a book,
Yes.
there's proceeds going to ovarian cancer. And we have heard through this podcast that how important it is and how hard it is to diagnose. And
Yes.
even though it has some really interesting symptoms, and if you
Yes.
don't know what those symptoms are, you need to go and press rewind and listen to the
Yes.
beginning of the
Press the
podcast.
replay. You can go on my YouTube channel. So the
Yes.
next website is the
Okay.
Divine Right. So Divine Right. That's Divine, DIVINEWRYTE.com. Nice, unique way to spell right. I'm a writer. So, divineright.com is my health and wellness coaching practice. And there you will find, I do individual as well as group coaching sessions. I also do workshops on mindful eating. I have one coming up. What's next for me is for caregivers and those who are in transition, and one about stressful workplaces and job loss. That's a workshop coming up this fall as well. And one is called Embracing the Renewed Me,
Mm.
Embracing My Renewed Me, and it's for those who are ready to push and go forward. We've been through a lot of challenges and struggles and trials. So there's this, like, once you are pieced back together again, it's a renewed you. You're
Mhm.
restored. But now what?
Yeah.
So that's all on my website. I have blogs and everything like that. My social media handles are Divine Right, all one word, DIVINEWRYTE. And on my YouTube channel, folks can find past conversations and shows that I've been on about ovarian cancer, Lyme disease, health and wellness, books, you name it, it's on there. And I think that's it. On Facebook is Serena Wills, /Serena Wills. That's my Facebook business page. But that's how folks can find me on Twitter, YouTube, IG, even Pinterest. I'm Divine Right. I'm on
Yeah.
Pinterest.
Yeah, listen, I've been sharing, like I had the opportunity to sit in on to be a part of one of Serena's workshops. I went and I purchased my little workshop piece there and I went in
Yes.
on
Thank you for
self-publishing,
coming.
and she dropped some nuggets about Pinterest and LinkedIn. I'm like, girlfriend, I've been sharing that
Yes.
information. I've been like telling some of my clients, like, you don't understand the power of Pinterest. And they're
Yep.
like, what are you talking about? I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to tell you the power of Pinterest. You're going to sign up for Serena's workshop so you can find out
Yeah.
for yourself.
Yes. Yes. I will actually have one coming up. I haven't even released my calendar yet, but on Saturday, October 24th, I'm gonna kick off the fall workshop series with
Okay.
self-publishing 101.
Okay.
You took 201, so now I'm
Yeah.
gonna do
I jumped the queue.
You jump the queue. So if you wanted to jump back, you could go to 101, and I'll talk
Oh
about
God.
Pinterest
Yeah,
there as well. And even LinkedIn, I tell people do
yeah,
not sleep on LinkedIn. It's really a
yeah. It's really
powerhouse,
good. Yeah,
and it's nice because it gets rid of all the extra stuff we don't need.
yeah,
People are looking at your profile for what you are delivering. You're not
yeah.
sharing crazy gifts or, it's really a powerful platform. So yeah, yeah, find
You dropped
me.
some nuggets on that workshop, and I was so glad that I took
Oh,
it.
thank
And
you.
Serena was so good. Serena made sure, and she said, Nicole, I said, Serena, I didn't have time to sign up for the work. She goes, there's still room. And bam, that Saturday she sent me a DM, and I was like, okay, I'm in here. I am in the workshop.
I
And I was
keep
like,
that
Dr.
registration
Vibe, I was
open.
like so grateful that Dr. Vibe did the show with you.
Yeah,
And
me too. That was
yeah,
wonderful, and I'm grateful for the show he did with you. And I was like, these moms right here are just giving me
the one
life.
on sons, raising sons. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
yes, those like they're just there's like they're reading my mind. Like this is yeah.
And this is how we become stronger as women, stronger as a community, stronger raising children, stronger as men. Because when you're raising sons, it's a different journey when you're raising sons than when you're raising daughters. And I
Yes.
always tell people, I'm going to slip in my little nugget. Do not wish me happy Father's Day. I'm not a dad. I can never be a dad. I don't want to be a dad. So just wish me happy Mother's Day. Appreciate me, but
Yeah, yeah,
we just don't have what it takes. And I appreciate all the dads out there that are doing an
yeah.
amazing
Because
job.
there are some solid. I mean, there are some men in our circle now, and I'm thankful for them. They live in our neighborhood, thank goodness.
Mhm.
And Jordan looks up to them. And I told them, you have right to, if you have to discipline him, yell at him.
The
He's like a
village,
son to them.
the village, the
And
village.
Jordan and my son likes that because that's what's no knock to his father, but he's not here. He's in New
Yeah,
York, and we don't they don't he's not an everyday.
yeah.
These are the men that my son used to see often before COVID. But
So that's the next show. How boy raising sons
yeah,
and
oh,
women raising sons and boys. Children learn through looking, and boys have a different way of learning. So okay,
oh.
Vibe, are you listening? Are you listening, Vibe? I'm looking down at my phone like I can see you. But Vibe, are you listening? Mothers raising sons, part two.
But is it?
Um,
It's different. It's completely. And it's nice that we're like I said, we're virtual homeschooling, but the nice balance is my weakness is his strengths. He
yeah,
loved math. He could do math in his sleep. I told him I'm 45 years old. I still can't stand math. Okay, so and it's like he's in third grade, but his math level, even though he has learning disabilities when it comes to reading, spelling, that's my strong point. The
mhm,
writer, the author.
mhm,
But yeah, his math is somewhere else. I can't deal with that. So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
just,
That is so amazing.
oh,
Kids and sons, yeah, they have a whole different language. Ed said he's listening, so I'm glad you're listening, Ed, because we're going to be calling on you. So many
yes.
stories to do, and
I
this
already
is
gave him
why
some dates. Yeah, we
yeah,
need to get a date on the calendar for
yeah.
sure.
So we're going to have an offline conversation, but
Yes.
as I say, let's be intentional about the conversations we have. Thank you
Yes.
for tuning into this
Um,
inspired conversation on Victory Speaks. Thank you again, Serena.
you're
You
welcome.
know,
Thank you.
You're so welcome. And I'm going to leave you with a quote. And I want to say this to everyone listening out there. Even if your conversation is just a smile to someone on the street, it's a conversation. It can change somebody's day. We need to take back our conversations and speak life in our conversations. If you're having conversations that are just pulling you down, you need to just say, can I call you back? You
Yeah.
know, or whatever you need to do, but you need to take yourself higher because you're always feeding your brain. And Zig Ziglar says, the most influential person in your life you will talk to all day or any day is you.
Mm,
So that is key. And I love, and if you don't know who Zig Ziglar is, go look him up. Zig Ziglar is he's not no longer here in the earth, but he has left a legacy, and he's a life coach, and his son has taken on what he does. And if you're looking to find out more about Victory Speaks, we're on Twitter, we are on Instagram and on YouTube, and it's Victory Speaks 7. On Facebook, it's Victory Speaks 77. So depending on where you're watching the broadcast or the rebroadcast. And today we literally I'm going to play a snippet of this song as we tune out, because we saw the transition of another powerful woman. And I don't own the rights to this song, and I'm going to make sure and put it in my bio so that Facebook or whomever does not delete our special conversation. So make sure your conversations are rooted in truth. They're rooted in love. They're rooted in peace. They're rooted in joy. Have a fabulous day. And her name is Helen Reddy. Remember that song? I am woman, hear me roar, with numbers too big to ignore. And so for all the women listening today, as we wind down this conversation and as we talk about, ovarian cancer awareness, and a couple of days ago, we spoke about sickle cell awareness, and this is something we as our community, we need to take better care of our health and ourselves. We need to get checked, get the advocacy that you need. If you go back in the chat, if you go back in the conversation, Serena talked about the BRCA1 and 2 gene to get the testing, and that's important. And not just as a woman, she reminded us, or not even reminded us, she told us and shared with us that men can carry the gene. And if you carry this gene, you can carry this if you have a daughter. So be mindful of that. And if you get to know your health, get to know your bodies, be mindful of the different nuances in your body. We all have to be mindful of that. And, bring an advocate when you go to the doctor, whether it's to the emergency or you get an interesting diagnosis, you don't know what's wrong with you, take an advocate with you to the doctor, because sometimes you're just too tired. Yes. And your mom said, love, and she loved like nobody's business. And I can tell she was a loving woman just by who you are. She laughed, and your smile is infectious. And, your son is also a reflection of that. And the way that you share is a reflection of her love, her laughter. And she said to forgive. And she made sure that she forgave everyone in her life that she may have felt something in her heart for, or may have hurt her. And do not wait for those friends. Don't wait for those friends, so you don't want to regret what you haven't done. And so these are just some of the nuggets in the conversation, in this inspiring conversation and this episode of Victory Speaks. So Serena and I are out. We're going to wrap you up with some music, and roar, people, roar and speak life today. And you can hear this. Yes, I paid the price. Look how much I gave you. I do everything. I am strong. I am invincible. I am woman. Let those lyrics sink in, my people. Have a great night. Nothing's gonna break you.